Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Julie Malinowski-Ball on behalf of the California Biomass Energy Alliance. This is the trade association of the state's woody biomass power producers. We support the governor's proposal to spend $50 million in CAL FIRE on GHG reduction activities. In particular, it's the fuel management portion of the funds. Those fuel management is very important to resilient forests, and even better is if you can get whatever the waste and residues are left over from whatever management you're doing in there, get it out of the forest into a biomass facility. You know, you got a win-win there. We think the science is strong. It's based on state-funded, peer-researched science, and we ask for your support. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Tim Schott on behalf of the California Association of Port Authorities, which is comprised of the 11 commercial publicly owned ports here in the state. We appreciate the cap and trade program, look forward to working with you on it. In particular, we're here today to support the low carbon transportation program, and would suggest that as you look into the metrics on that, that you'll find incredible investment in our freight systems and in particular in our ports, and we would encourage you to consider augmenting that fund. Our ports are absolute leaders in emissions reductions. We're committed to environmentally friendly port operations. And in fact, since 2005, they've reduced NOx, SOx, and particulate matter emissions by upwards of 70% and GHGs by upwards of 20%. So we're really on the cutting edge. And ports are a fabulous place for incubating these transformative types of projects that we're going to need to implement in order to reach our 2050 goals, certainly. And those include the electrification or the near zero emission drayage vehicles, cargo handling equipment. But in addition, there's some innovative programs coming out of our smaller ports. The Port of Stockton is operating their M580 project, which takes cargo off of the busy I-80 congested corridor, puts international cargo on barges, and then ships it to the Port of Oakland, where it goes out to the rest of the world or comes back in from the rest of the world. We're also looking at programs that provide energy efficiency, for instance, the replacement of traditional lighting with LED lighting at the terminals with a solar panel link, perhaps, something like that. So a lot of places to invest, and it is going to carry the co-benefit, our investment in ports and freight will carry the co-benefit of helping significantly to meet our SB 535 requirements. The ports are located in communities that are disadvantaged and that are heavily impacted. And in addition, it will help the ports stay competitive in the most highly competitive marketplace our ports have operated in historically, and that will bring attendant job creation, make sure that the logistics sector continues to provide very good family wage jobs. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Monica Palmera. I'm with the California Coalition for Rural Housing. I'm here to speak in particular about the proceeds going to the Strategic Growth Councils. We very much support this allocation, and especially the 50% set aside for disadvantaged communities. However, we are concerned about the requirements for this program and that they potentially may exclude hundreds of smaller cities and unincorporated communities. A lot of these requirements incorporate certain densities, certain levels of infrastructure and transit infrastructure that these communities may not have in place right now. And it would exclude them from this program, these kinds of communities that could stand to benefit the most from this funding. So we look forward to working with the SGCs on perhaps some language that would help incorporate these communities. Thanks so much.
Catherine Phillips with Sierra Club, California. Thank you to your committee for its thorough and complete analysis of the budget, especially the cap and trade section. I want to bring us back to sort of the point of this cap and trade money to begin with, and what the expectation is that it will help capture greenhouse gas emissions above and beyond what we would normally get through the normal regulatory process or through the cap and trade as it's going. And this week, or earlier this week, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the UN panel that has periodically looked at the status of climate change, made it very clear that what we do today is going to have an effect on what happens in the second half of this century after 2050. So it it lends credence to the idea that there's a temporal element to this. We need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions today to ensure that we can survive the impacts of climate change in the future. That's why the Sierra Club feels in a rather awkward position. We greatly believe that high-speed rail should be part of a robust transportation system, with the emphasis on system. We do not believe that a third of the cap-and-trade money should be used each year for a project that will not get us greenhouse gas reductions in a timely way. We know from our conversations with the administration that about $750 million could be spent on elements of that project that would get greenhouse gas reductions in the near term. We're granted that, but we believe that the money, especially in these early years that we get from cap and trade, should be spent on projects that get us reductions in the near term to ensure that we have a planet to leave to our kids and grandkids after 2050. So I appreciate your attention to those 4 points brought up by Michelle Pissarro for the letter that we've all signed on to, or a number of us have, and your diligence in approaching this topic.
Good afternoon. Cynthia Vitale on behalf of Placer County. We support the appropriation of auction revenue proceeds into resource programs that support the implementation of natural community conservation plans and regional habitat conservation plans. These types of plans provide broad protections for animals, plants, and their associated habitats in specific regions, and they also simultaneously allow for compatible and appropriate development activities. These types of plans provide a really great opportunity for GHG emission mitigation, and we're happy to follow up with your office with additional information on the actual statistical benefits associated with these plans. In the coming weeks, as you determine how to invest this revenue, we encourage the committee to consider the framework established in your legislation, Chairman, SB 1268. We really appreciate that this language would provide, or that this legislation would establish a new program for the investment of natural resources, or the investment of auction revenue in natural resources programs, and we appreciate that it has priority for programs that contribute to natural community conservation plans. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Johnson with Shot and Lights Advocates, speaking on behalf of the California Airports Council. The California Airports Council represents the 33 commercial service airports throughout the state, and our airports are also among world leaders in greenhouse gas emission reduction efforts. However, recently our efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions has been hindered due to limited resource availability. So our airports would like to ensure that airport project funding for low-carbon transportation projects are also eligible for the Sustainable Communities Program. An example of how this would also serve the outside communities at Sacramento International Airport, the CNG refueling stations are also available to the local school districts for their buses. So it doesn't only impact the on-site airport operations, this is also affecting the communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bonnie Holmes-Jen with the American Lung Association in California. And again, I want to thank you and the committee for the important work you're doing to address the climate crisis through the allocation of these funds. And just 3 quick points that, the American Lung Association, the public health community, are strongly supportive of moving forward and the basic categories of expenditure discussed today, with a key focus on the low-carbon transportation, sustainable communities, the energy efficiency, and renewable energy. We support the basic principles also presented by Michelle Pissarro for accountability, transparency, and we're particularly focused on the need for increased funding in a couple of areas. The sustainable communities, active transportation, SB 375 is a very important area, has been well discussed, important for public health benefits, reducing chronic illness, and transit operations, especially in disadvantaged communities, some key areas that deserve a little more focus and attention. And just last point, this has been mentioned, but I feel it's very important to us that while these cost-effective calculations are a very helpful tool, we also need to be always considering the co-benefits, and that specifically we would like the committee to be considering maximizing local and regional reductions in criteria pollutants, advancing health and equity, disadvantaged communities, and improving community resilience to climate change. So these are important additional considerations. Thanks.
Jim Lights on behalf of the San Francisco Bay Area Rapid Transit District and the Capitol Corridor Amtrak service. We strongly are both members of the Transportation Coalition for Livable Communities. We support the sustainable communities and rail modernization programs. Just a couple of suggestions to make those proposals even better. We think that additional funding should be added to both programs. We would also suggest that the metropolitan planning organizations be tasked with allocating the money. We believe that they are best suited to do that. And we think that the funding allocations should be on some sort of formulaic basis, such as what we used in Prop 1A several years ago. Thank you very much.
Frank Oliveira with Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability.
Okay.
I request that you not consider California High-Speed Rail Authority's request for 33% of the cap-and-trade funds. Their project will be a gross polluter for 2 decades in the worst air pollution district in the, or one of the worst air pollution districts in the state, before it brings any benefit. The funding could be better spent on passenger rail, bus transport, all the things that you heard today as far as the different groups that were here, plus solar. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Members of the committee. Jeremy Smith here on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council in support of the proposal for cap-and-trade money to go to the high-speed rail project. I wanted to point out 3 things. One, all the equipment that's going to go into building the high-speed rail project has already been through extensive studies at CARB. This off-highway vehicles that are used in an off-highway manner for construction, they've all had to be retrofitted with filters to clean their diesel particulates. The vehicles that are used to create this project are going to be clean diesel, which is something that's begun even before high-speed rail at CARB. Secondly, an earlier speaker spoke about private investment, and seeing this investment by the state would drive them to look at this project more closely. I've been in every one of these hearings on both sides. That's the first time somebody's come from the venture capital community saying this investment is going to make us want to invest money into this project or look at it more closely. I think it's very important to note for the record. So we're in support of the project. We're in support of using the money in this way. We believe it is going to get greenhouse gas reduction. It may not meet it as fast as some folks in the room want, but there's going to be 50 million people in the state by 2050. Having some of them out of their cars and able to get into an electric train is going to do a lot towards getting greenhouse gas reduced. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That was a lot of public testimony. But I appreciate everybody's comments, and we'll take all that information in consideration when this comes back in final budget hearings we're going to have in a month or 2. So thank you all for coming, and I appreciate it. And we'll go on to the Part B part, which is the specific high-speed rail authority issues. And I don't think we need to talk about this too much, because we kind of talked it to death already. But I wanted to turn it over to Jeff Morales, our CEO of the High Speed Rail Authority, and have a presentation on the item so we can put it on record. So Jeff, thank you for staying here and listening to all those people. So I'll turn it over to you so you can be expeditious about your presentation.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, your what I would call stick-to-itiveness is a trait we need to get our program finished.
Yeah, well, that's the way I am.
It's a good thing.
Sorry.
I think the staff memo does a very good job of capturing things. I'm not going to go through and repeat everything that's in there. I don't know if you want to go through item sequentially or just
you could
how
just
you want to
go through it all.
Okay. So, and I would say I'm joined by Russ Fong, who's our CFO.
Russ,
I can speak in particular. With regard to an update on the project, we did submit the latest project update report that's required under SB 1029 to the legislature on March 1st. It contains updates on a number of different elements, but just in general, we are moving ahead with the first design build package. That contract was executed in August of 2013. They've been working on the design and are nearing completion of that, and so we'll be ready to move into the construction, the full-blown construction phase in the near future. We are continuing to work on issues, right-of-way acquisition, other things, in order to be able to move forward. At the same time, we are advancing the next design-build package, construction package 2. We have released, actually, I believe it's released today, the request for proposals. We have 5 world-class teams who submitted qualifications in order to bid on the package. We're very pleased with that, to see that level of interest and level of competition.
How many bids?
5. 5 that are in the running now to submit bids. And that really represents some of the best expertise, not just from within the U.S., but around the world. In fact, 3 of the 5 teams have very strong representation and are led by foreign firms who have built high-speed rail systems elsewhere in the world. We expect to award that contract right around the end of this calendar year. So by the end of this calendar year, we would have the entire section that was appropriated by the legislature in 2012 under contract and underway. We're very pleased with that. We continue to move forward in partnership with the federal government on the program. Under our grant agreement, we're using federal funds to advance the program. That's a tapered match, a tool that's used very commonly on projects. That allows us, among other things, to make sure we can meet the ARA deadline. With 2.2 of the billion of the federal funding was provided through the 2009 Stimulus Act, or ARA, and that has a September 2017 deadline to it. So the taper match is in part to help us ensure that we can make that deadline, and we're very comfortable that we're on pace to do that. Very importantly, as we've discussed, and something that was discussed at length by many of the commenters, was the importance of connecting services, and that was an important element of the appropriation in 2012 and of our program. You asked for an update on that. Some of that we've already talked about. The Caltrain electrification, a very important one that is underway as part of the program. We'll have significant GHG reductions, but that's a program, as you know as well as anyone, has been sought for decades, and maybe we can go out and run 2 miles when it's done in 2019 around the smog-free track there. Okay. Okay.
Pole vault. He's a statewide leader in the pole vault. So he's going to does his pole vault practice right there next to the railroad track. So.
Well, with the reduction in emissions, you'll be able to see him as he reaches the height there.
About 15 feet right now.
Some other important programs that are advancing as part of the overall program, and I guess we should now call it the statewide rail enhancement program, maybe rather than modernization. We'll heed your words on that. But important safety and capacity improvements. Positive train control, which is a federal mandate for 2015. That's moving forward in California. We are at the forefront of that now nationally. The Metrolink system in Southern California is the first to actually now be implementing it on schedule. Caltrain is implementing it. BART is implementing it. The Amtrak lines here in the state are implementing it. That's all with 1A money as a piece of that and helping that program move forward. So that's a very important feature to keep in mind, that we're not only advancing capacity but improving safety of the rail system as we move forward with this program. Mr. Chairman, I think that's I tried to touch on most of the main points you had asked about. I'm happy to take any questions, provide any clarification, and also discuss the BCPs in particular. And I'd ask Russ.
You want to go into the public transportation account issue?
Sure. The budget proposal does include a request for funding out of the public transportation account. I think
Thank you.
Finance is good.
Mr. Chair, Russ.
Talk to it first. Or? Let's let them go first.
You can go first.
Go ahead.
Yes, as part of the governor's budget, there's a request for a $29.3 million loan from the PTA to support High Speed Rail's state operations. One of the questions is, does this loan impact any existing projects? We worked with Caltrans and agency to do a 5-year look through 17-18, and based on current need, there would be no impact to existing projects. As for can more be programmed, Caltrans uses a cash management system, so based on need, projects will be programmed. So I think as projects become in line to receive funding, Caltrans will work with agency and CTC to do the normal programming process to get those projects funded.
So when is that money going to get paid back?
The intent is to repay the loan with a Prop 1A, so as soon as the state can win, or if we favor well in the lawsuit, we would intend to pay back the loan that way, and we'll work with CTC and Caltrans and agency to see based on the cash need. One of the benefits is we want to pay the loan back, but we also want to make sure that we're not paying it back too early. That way we don't incur additional bond debt and service. So,
okay, thank you. And we're going to hold that item open. So now let's go through the Southern California item.
Okay, Russ Fallen, Chief Financial Officer. The item number 5, Southern California Improvements, is a request to use federal funds in the amount of $32 million. There will be a local match of $48 million. And this is for the enhancement around the area of the LA Union Station. Again, it's important to note that this is just use of federal funds, no state funds involved. You have a couple of questions here. When would the construction of these improvements begin? We have 2 projects. One's known as Scripps, and that's projected to start in 2016-17. The other one is a Doran Street project, and that's looking to start at 2015 and 2016.
Those are the construction
times.
So planning and design is underway on both of those currently.
Yeah.
Okay, question number 2, who determines which projects are receiving funds? This is a joint effort between the High Speed Rail, the FRA, and the local agencies, and they pick the priorities of which projects come first. And then number 3, what actions are being taken to ensure that these ARA funds are spent by the September 30th, 2017 deadline? We currently do a quarterly funding contribution plan to the FRA, which shows our spending patterns and projections to ensure that we meet that September 2017 deadline.
Okay. I had a question going back to the EIR kind of engineering. Can you tell me when the San Jose to Merced EIR environmental clearance and project engineering will be, what's the timeline on that?
We're projecting currently, and I want to confirm this, and I'll get back to you certainly, but fall of 2016 for completion of that document.
Okay. That's all the way.
Yes, correct. All the way from the Y section over to San Jose.
San Jose. Okay. Another question would be. Is the construction completion date fiscally constrained, or is that construction timeline constrained? I mean, which is it? Is it fiscally constrained based on the amount of money availability or the projected availability, or is it constrained on the basis of your ability to complete the project from a construction standpoint?
Are you talking about the initial piece under construction in the Central Valley, or the larger program? The whole thing is a combination, really, of the two. It's assuming a pace of funding.
Yes.
But we are comfortable in terms of, from a constructability perspective, that there is the capacity in the industry to build the system, at least on the schedule that we've laid out. One of the important elements of the cap and trade proposal, and it was spoken to by some of the public commenters, and you know it certainly from your experience, having that steady stream of funding, a dependable stream, would allow us to enter into long-term contracts, allow us to move much more expeditiously on the entire program.
It's the way it works.
It's the way it works, and time equals money. Our base year capital estimate is $54 billion for the total program. It's almost $68 billion when you factor in time. And so
For
54 to 68, so about a $14 billion
what's the
just
difference
escalation.
in years?
Well, that's starting from base year of 2013 and then expanding out to 2029, I believe, is the final date that we show in construction.
And then what's the unconstrained construction timeline? Unfiscally constrained.
It would be shorter than that.
How many years shorter?
We haven't laid that out specifically. In part, that would depend on, again, how we could move forward. If our goal would be to move on multiple segments simultaneously and not just sequentially. But I don't think there's any question we can cut that down by several years at least.
Yes. You're familiar with the TIFA program, right? The federal
yes, absolutely.
Financing.
Yes.
Has other state governments, high-speed rail projects, large-scale projects used that financing to, in a way where they expedite the projects? And I just want, speaking to the gentleman that talked about private financing, gentleman got up and said he was working with organizations that are venture capital investors. Are there financing TIFA kind of federal loan guarantee financing kind of options that you can use, or is to keep the timeline to a construction schedule, limited timeline, not a fiscally constrained timeline?
There are absolutely programs that we could take advantage of and would certainly look to take advantage of, and we've had discussions with US DOT about those programs. The key to being able to do that is, again, having an ongoing revenue stream, because the basis of those are financing programs.
Yes.
And the two...
How you're paying the annual payment.
Right, exactly. There's the TIFIA program, as you mentioned, then RIF, which is the Railroad Rehabilitation Investment Financing Program, which is absolutely would be another tool available to us in order to accelerate.
50 million or more kind of program, right?
Correct, right.
You have to have a project that costs more than 50 million.
Right, and the program is, Congress 2 years ago expanded the capacity of that program greatly.
That's what I was getting at, yeah.
Right, and the RIF program...
What was the intention of Congress in doing that? Did they talk about these high-speed rail projects as the type of projects?
I don't know how much, they certainly, it's part of a broader effort in Congress, I think, to move away from direct grant type funding as the sole mechanism to really looking at financing. And so, and it's been a very highly subscribed program, very popular. That's why they increased it so much. The RIF program is...
High-speed rail or big rail projects used it?
There are, Amtrak, I know, for instance, is looking to finance its next rail car purchase, which we're working with them on through that program, through the RIF program. Yes. There are other major programs that are going through that as well, yes.
Okay, I'm very interested in seeing how, just on this high-speed rail, how the advantage of having various kinds of financing, and even if we had to request legislation from the federal government to open up the TIFA program to finance our high-speed rail project, we'd have to pay the annual payment, of course, and figure out how to pull together the pots of money for it. But if we did have a project that was financed, it may be able to be completed quicker, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
So that would be a cost saving to the taxpayer. We could do that.
Significant. And one other thing along those lines, I know, we tend to focus on the big number of the $68 billion.
Yeah, I know.
That's for the whole system. We're not going out and building the whole system all at once. We wouldn't be financing it all at once. And so, I think it's a daunting figure. We understand that, but I think it's not unlike when 50, 60 years ago when the state highway system began. If we had said, what's it going to cost us, by the year 2000 to have built out the state highway system, I think we would have been having the same debates that people are having over high-speed rail today.
Okay, thank you. I think, is there any testimony on this item? I don't know if anybody would like to speak on it. I don't see anybody. Yes, we'll come forward. Please.
I'm sorry, this is on the whole item?
Yes, yes. Gentleman would like to speak. You have the floor.
Justin Banzant on behalf of the California State Association of Electrical Workers, the Western State Council of Sheet Metal Workers, the California Pipe Trades Council, and the Elevator Constructors Union. We're all in support of the governor's proposal to build high-speed rail. I just wanted to also make a comment on something I heard earlier about the short-term benefits versus the long-term benefits of this. The men and women in the Central Valley who belong to our organizations that are not working right now would disagree that there are no short-term benefits either for the environment or the community. Going to work right now is good for everyone involved. It's good for how those communities are going to develop in a more compact way, which is environmentally friendly. And it's also a positive thing when people have the ability to feed themselves and their family locally and be a productive part of their community. So the notion that there's not an environmental benefit immediately or a community-wide benefit is just wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Frank Oliveira, Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability. I wasn't going to speak today, but I have some confusion about some of the testimony. I heard that the whole system was $68 billion, which certainly isn't the whole 800-mile system that was discussed in the proposition. The other issue is the $68 billion number that was thrown out for a whole system at one time was $98 billion. And I believe that that is what it costs to actually build the track all the way to Union Station. At any rate, in this hall last week, it was testified that there's a likelihood that this project, like other projects, will go 3 or 4 times over budget. So what we're talking about is not $68 billion. We're talking about something that's about $250 billion or $350 billion. I'd just like to clarify that. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Jeremy Smith here again on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. For obvious reasons, we want to put workers back to work on this project, but also for the comments I made earlier regarding GHG reduction and expected influx of 15 odd million more people to California. We're going to need this as part of our transportation infrastructure solution to accommodate the influx of people coming into the state. And so we're in support of the proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I had a question for Jeff on the carbon reduction issue.
Sure.
If we completed this project 2 or 3 years earlier, the benefit of the carbon reduction would be how much?
Well, having for the phase 1 system, the LA to San Francisco, the reductions, annual reductions would be close to 2 million tons a year, just in the mode shift transfer. So the sooner we can achieve that, the better. And part of the dramatic thing there is, particularly as we get the full system implemented, what we would see is a significant shift of people from airplanes onto the train. That's what's happened.
The idea, right?
That's the idea. That's what's happened around the world. High-speed rail emits conservatively about 1/9 of what airplanes do when you look at everything included. So it's really a dramatic change in how people travel and how that impacts our environment.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just, Mr. Chairman, can I just make one comment in response to a comment? All of this authority and this program has undergone a lot of scrutiny and criticism, much of it warranted, I will say.
A lot more as you go.
And a lot more to come. Yes, right, absolutely. But one of the things. That's right. Is,
I know what we get when we're here.
It's part of the process, right? But over the last few years, in particular, and since I came on and the new board members, we worked very hard to ensure that when we put out numbers, whether it's ridership estimates, whether it's cost estimates, that they are scrubbed multiple times internally, go through quality review, but also importantly externally, independent experts who look at those numbers. So when we put anything out, it's been carefully examined. People may not like them, but that's what they are. And I would just caution the committee to, be careful in terms of other people throwing numbers out that haven't gone through any sort of scrutiny like that and have no basis in fact or analysis. And just want to get that on the record.
Okay. I think we're done. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we're adjourned.